So here we are with Jan from the Co-Creation Loft, and we're going to get a little bit into his story, what he's about, what he's working on, what his ideas are, what makes up a Jan. So if you can give yourself a little bit of an introduction, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Eddie, for having me and interviewing me. My name is Jan Stassen. I'm working for and at the Loft. That's what I do most of my time. I grew up on the Dutch border near Nimwegen or Venlo on the German side. Moved from there to Düsseldorf, lived there for a couple of years, did a few things in between, ended up in Berlin, and I'm pretty happy here. And I'm in charge at the moment of running the space here, so organizing around and things for the Loft, doing the program and other things. And I'm also part of a team that's working on the Museum of Values. We're trying to find and explore the idea of get the discussion going around values, societal values, on a very personal level. And we're doing that in schools and exhibition spaces, and also partly, but not that much, in companies.
Beautiful. And so here we are in the Co-Creation Loft right now.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it that brought you to the Co-Creation Loft? What was that moment? Did you meet somebody, or did you get a little email? What brought you into the Co-Creation Loft in the first place?
That was 2016, and I got a call from Stassen, who met a guy called Thomas Björkman, and they decided or discussed the idea of creating a space in Berlin. And at that time I had a company, a little thing project going where it was called 21 Grams. It was the idea of bringing craftsman's culture and artisan culture in the 21st century, and it was good, it was fun, but there was something missing. And Stassen called me at the right moment and said, "Are you interested in something special, in something?" And so, without knowing what really to expect and what was happening, I flew out to Stockholm, and that was a week later. That must be somewhere around April 2016. And so I flew out. I met Ilana, a wonderful woman, at the airport. We got to Stockholm and met Thomas and met Stassen again, and we decided over the course of 4 days that we want to create a space, a hub, a starting point, a little satellite in Berlin. And so that was the beginning of this little adventure. It was 4 days escape to Stockholm.
Great. And so, and who was Stassen to you at this point? Was he somebody that you'd worked with, or was he a good friend from a long time ago?
Stassen and I actually met at a company we were both working for. He was a freelancer at that time, and I was a working student, and we were both really unhappy with the company and the idea of just selling. I always said selling sweet dreams to fat kids, and we had like nice conversations and discussions around that topic about doing something else, and we felt a little bit cornered by this idea of starting a career in traditional advertising and corporate world, where we're both from. And we kept in touch over time. That was 2012 or something. And we kept in touch and met every once in a while. And then I moved to Bali, and we chatted because he went there shortly after I left again. And so we were in touch ever since, discussing what we want to do and how to change our little universe. And so he called me when he got the offer to start something like this, that he knew he needed someone to help him. And so he was thought of me as someone he can trust, and so we started this together.
Beautiful. So there's a little bit of a parallel life there, that you both had a bit of an itch that something was not quite right, and you both followed your own paths until they met. Okay. And in a quick way, how did Stassen swing the Co-Creation Loft to you in an email, so to speak? What was its summary?
Oh, that was not really a summary. That was the interesting part. So the only thing I really knew was, okay, there's this foundation in Stockholm they're trying to do something else, building and working towards a new narrative, a new paradigm, or a paradigm shift. And we could do something here, and there is no clear direction yet, but we can figure it out along the way. And that was the thing that really just I think brought me in, was okay, let's see where this is going, and let's try something entirely new and not just rely on existing concepts and just copy stuff. We just started from scratch, and that's how he sold me. And then he also sent me stuff and thoughts and ideas of the foundation and that are connected to that foundation. And for me, that was really interesting, the whole concept and idea around personal development and personal growth, because I was at a point where I was happy with my life, but I felt a little bit stuck in my roles that I had, working-wise and also in personal life. And so I just felt this little call for something new. At the beginning, it felt very small, and then it became massive, actually.
And that was what inspired you, the idea of the self and personal and consciousness development.
Yeah. I mean, at the beginning, I didn't really know much about it. So I got the first lecture by Ilana on the flight to Stockholm. A very short introduction to what she's doing, what she's all about, and what she thinks what's going to happen. And she also didn't know what was happening. And so that was, there was all these little hinges I got from people around me then that I got to know and that I met, and at that time were really inspiring. And so, yeah.
And so, what's Alana's full name?
Ilana Wetzlar.
Okay, and what was, so you're sitting on the plane and you're flying off to God knows where in Sweden, and she's passing on this idea to you mid-flight. What were the kind of some of the things that she said? What was she talking about the world around?
So for me, I knew this whole stuff around, I don't know, good facilitation and holding workshops, but very on a corporate, and also between the corporate stuff and advertising stuff I worked in the social entrepreneurship field or scene. So that's words that you know, but this this deeper idea of helping people or just asking the right question and giving space in whatever format, be it a workshop or be it a weekend, a retreat or something. That was something, at least in this detailed explanation that I never heard before. So for me, that was new. So she started explaining that she's an amazing facilitator, and so she started explaining what she's doing, what she's up to, what she did over the last couple of years, and then she gave me like a rough breakdown of spiral dynamics and these broad, vague concepts that are circling around these scene or the scene. So and then I started asking questions, and from there on I started reading about it for myself, and then that was my starting point. And she just threw in a few names and a few very, for me, vague concepts, because I didn't really know what that means for Tuesday morning. Or for it's nice to talk about these are levels and layers of development, blah blah blah. But so what? So what does it mean for Tuesday, for my weekend, for my whatever? No, for my group of friends or for whatever. So yeah, that was the beginning.
Beautiful. So and we might get to a few of those names and a few of those books that you got onto, those few early resources, so that people watching this can also. But also, it seems like as you're on this flight, as you're going to Sweden, as you're going to meet Thomas, that Thomas and Ilana both have an idea that this is necessary and urgent, that something like this is necessary and urgent. Would you be able to put that forward in a vague enough way?
Yes. Yes, I think so. So at least for me, I can't generalize it. I'm not an expert in this, obviously, but for me, so coming from that field of maybe from work field of advertising and all this world of corporate, or this corporate world that I was attached to at that time. Or when I started working, I did an apprenticeship when I was 18 in an advertising agency, and this was like a very corporate world. It was a big agency, American agency. And so I became frustrated with that in the first place, and so I switched to social entrepreneurship, and I started working in that field where people think of or also changing the world through business, which is not bad in general. It was just very necessary. But I got sometimes stuck in that field because there's more to it for me. If you want to change something, was always a slight feeling, what is my role in this change, or what I am in this change. And so it had a connection to, we now say that here too, but if you want to change something, it's good to start with yourself. And I was missing that part in the social entrepreneurship scene. So there's always change something in the outside, change something in Africa, Latin America, I go to Russia, I go to Afghanistan and do blah, blah. But now sometimes a little bit disconnected to my own role and who I am as a person. So it was slightly disintegrated or disconnected. And so when I started talking and reading about these theories and these ideas and these vague concepts, that was, for me, at least a little bit a missing link. So yeah, we need to change something in the outside world, and yeah, there are troubling times, and we have crises everywhere. Not everywhere, and not everything's bad, but there are crises in the world, from refugee to politics to, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff happening at the moment, but the missing link was that there was a connection to your own development, your own personal stuff that's happening, that you evolved in a certain way, and that you're in this with your own identity, with your own belief of who you are. And that was really nice, and that was like just a starting point. And so yeah, these sort of meetings and conversations, discussions that we had opened my eyes a little bit to that field, and so I got the connection for me going.
And was there a moment that this really hit you? You're sitting there and you're realizing that actually there's something missing in social entrepreneurship. Was there a moment that you had a greater realization about maybe feeling still like your role wasn't as available within that? Was there one moment that comes to mind?
I think what I learned was, at least for me, they're amazing people and doing amazing stuff. So I don't want to generalize it in any way. But for me, there was still in this social entrepreneurship, at least a little bit, and in a few spaces and in a few moments, this idea of competition, for example. And that always connects then to power and ego and other things. So that's what I sometimes got stuck in, where I thought, okay, we all want to do the same thing, but still everybody wants to do wants to have their own brand rights, or their own companies and their own and big, I don't know, paychecks or big job titles or whatever that is.
Within the realm of social entrepreneurship, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was where I first thought, okay, this is something that feels slightly off. And there are these, obviously, if you start a company, if it's social or not, there are these fights in between people and between like founders, founding partners, and they all get into like these. It's hard to do this, but if you have I thought if you really connect it to your cause, then I mean there's still an issue, but you should circle around your issue and not about like your personal agenda. And so that felt slightly off. So these moments, and also there are these figures and people in that scene that still have big egos, and they're just about themselves, talking about you just have to follow your dreams and blah blah blah. And that felt not really honest. I don't know, you're not honest, but there was something missing. And so that's why I left that field for a while. Did something for a year or two, did something in between. But yeah.
And so off you go. You're on the plane now, and you're flying off to Sweden to meet Thomas and with Elana, and so you feel like this might be the thing that at least is going to the root of the cause here. You know, not so much external, but to the root of the individual. And so, would it be right in saying that that was a part of your theory, a part of the concept that you wanted to create something like the co-creation loft that not only had that social entrepreneurship level, which is what quite a few people here are doing, as far as I know the word social entrepreneurship, but it's also to give them grounding and to give them a solid backing and a community of self-discovery. Would you say that would be?
Yeah, and still, I don't really know, or to be right, I can't really say that we aim for something specific and it should be this or that and should feel like this. It was more like we started with, stupidly put, with good intentions, and then from there we totally, not in a bad way, lost control or didn't have control over the development of the loft, and it became the thing that it is now because of its members and because of the periphery of people that are coming in and leaving again, and this energy, this community that is or creates itself. So I can't say that it was just we aim for this perfect and orchestrated space. We didn't do that. I think we had this feeling all in a shed, in our own visions, in our own minds, what is missing somehow, and so everybody put this to the table, gave this in this little idea, and from there we're trying to build something up, and now we have this, and there's still things that we struggle with, so there's still discussion going on of where do you want to put it or where we want to go with it, and I don't know, but the starting point was maybe just starting with a good intention and creating some sort of like a white space, a white label where people bring, or where different perspectives can be explored and can come together, and not just this one scene that works from here or this one field, but we bring that together and we hold that for each other, and then we'll see, and with the hope and the trust that something good will come out of it.
And that's beautiful in a sense, and that's what I enjoy so much about the co-creation loft is that it is such a mix of people of different fields with a fundamental understanding of we're all in this together. So we flew to Sweden, and then we had our chats. I'm sure that you had some pretty magic moments in Sweden. Were you on an island?
I was not on an island, but one night we stayed at a friend's place, and we after a long day of doing workshops and discussing and working, it was a Saturday, so we flew in on Friday morning, I think Friday morning, and we left on Monday night. And so it was a whole weekend through working and workshops. But we stayed in the north of Stockholm and at a friend's place, and he had this little sauna on a little, not boat, but on a little raft, so to say. And so at night it was quite cold. It was early spring. We would go out onto the lake in the middle of nowhere, in this vast nature. And we're just having our own sauna and jumping in the lake on Saturday and Sunday nights, and that was amazing. We had an amazing time. It was, incredible experience, and
I'm pretty sure some pretty interesting discussions happened on that sauna as well.
Yeah,
Great.
Yeah. For me, it was all a new world, so I was just mostly listening, I have to say, and just sitting there quietly and asking and. Listening. The talks and the connection that we got there was amazing, and that was, I think, for us later on in the whole process, there were also like weeks and times where we all struggled because we thought we do that half-time job, and then I still had to do my studies or finish my studies. And Stefan had still has his own company, and and Ilana just had other things to do as well, and then so there was a lot of stuff happening at the same place at the same time. But that all brought us together. I think it was a nice way of starting this. Yeah, to say.
And so you come back, and then you start hitting the books, so to speak. Is that, and what were some of the books and names that first stood out for you? What was something that really
what stood out? So I think I read a few things, or still do it, but it was not only the books. It was, I mean, they're amazing concepts and that are really interesting. One is obviously Meta Moderna, that Daniel and Emil as Hansi Freinert wrote. That was an interesting approach. Then also Thomas' book, The Nordic Secret, was a very intelligent and very eye-opening approach to education and to this idea of education, to this old idea of Bildung, of creating your own image as a person and finding your identity. That was really interesting. But also other books. I read a book that for me was just randomly, because I found it in a hostel where you have these book swaps, right? And there was a book, someone gave it to me, I think. One was called The Four Agreements. I forgot the author and the name of the author. But that was quite interesting, where he describes that he has 4 agreements with himself that helps him to approach life and complexity in life. That was interesting. And one was the idea, there was a Buddhist book called Rebel Wisdom. I think, where was it? Rebel?
I think I saw that in the meditation room.
Yeah, it's Rebel Wisdom, right? And that was also very interesting. That was one of the first books I read, because that was just a very broad idea of what is, because normally our idea of spirituality or personal growth is very much connected to this idea of religion, or that is connected very to strict dogmas or these ideas, and the author describe in a very good way that letting go of these dogmas and finding your very unique way is the only way you can do it, and not following other people's idea. That was really interesting. Also the very gentle way of writing. It was put in very nice words and very gently described. It was very nice. And so I started reading a lot about it, and still trying to explore that in a very active matter. So I was not only reading, but went to all these different workshops and tried to find like my own little angle to it. And that was also very, not at least funny, because sometimes you have these very shitty workshops, or at least you feel very disconnected to what they're doing right now, and you're just sitting in the middle of nowhere in like this, I don't know, cacao ceremony or whatever. You think, what the hell am I doing here? It's Wednesday night. Other people watch Netflix and you're in the middle of nowhere, and I don't know. So that was really funny that time. So I explored a few things until I knew what was something that I'm interested in, what is the style that I like, that helps me, and that's changed over time. And it's not only so, I started reading, but also I started exploring that in the field, I would say.
Doing.
Yeah, in doing.
That's a brave thing to do, yeah. Really. And especially for somebody like me and maybe to a degree you, people who like to read books, who like to step back, to like to get into the intellectual stuff, and maybe find a big group of people a little bit later. It's a brave thing to do, to step into that.
Yeah, it was sometimes. It was just, it's like the first very easy example. Normally these workshops I really like to use. One simple method is staring into each other's eyes for 3 minutes, and the first few times you do it, it's very, very uncomfortable. And after a few times you get used to it, and now I can do that easily, which is nice. And also, at the beginning it was really like, oh fuck, what the hell? But yeah, yeah. It was nice. It's a nice time. Though. So end of 2016, I started going everything that I found on the internet or that people recommended. And then we brought in people, and then you obviously start participating in the workshops here. And then, yeah, that was interesting.
And so this time of a bit of like exploration and joining the workshops, the co-creation loft is now like a nebulous of just beginning to form. Yeah? And so the ideas were coming up. And did you feel like you were driving that, or did it also feel like it was kind of sweeping you along? It was just coming into play on its own way?
Yeah, I would very much say that. It's not really. Oh, there was nothing really planned about program or what it's supposed to be. We had this core line of it's a space for exploring new perspectives, and we had our ideas, our own angles to it. But there were also nights where people coming in that did something entirely different, and so that was right, and we're still trying to hold that. And so, but sometimes it's hard because people try to put you into like their own forms and figures what you are, and put it down to a sense. So what is the co-creator actually doing? And say, yeah, it's still evolving. So yeah, but there's something that you must do. So that is what I really enjoy. But sometimes it's hard to hold that so that we're not too rigid to ourselves and that become too easy on it and say, okay, now we are just this spiritual path community that just do stuff in this direction, but to keep open or staying open to new things and exploring new things and just doing regular workshops that are now on a weekly basis or whatever, but still finding our ways of exploring new formats and new ways. That's not easy.
It's the middle way. It's really, really, really difficult to hold that and to keep that tabula rasa, to keep that openness, especially when there's a lot of pressure from the outside to make yourself defined. And but that's what I guess it's still in that process of just becoming that it was in those first few months that it was coming about. And was there a moment that that really took you back and you're like, okay, this is happening now. This is something that's happening?
I mean, if you start and you put out the first events and you're hoping that at least 5 people come, and you're not by yourself and the speakers or the people who hold the workshop or the night, the first ones, the first thing where I thought, okay, right, we're really doing this was because obviously our opening, we had like this, our grand opening was just 100 people or something. It was not huge, but for us it was like a good way of putting us on the map. So at least showing what you have and like going out, and that was the first thing. And maybe the first workshops or nights that sold out quickly, or where people are really texting you later on and saying, okay, that was amazing. When you say, okay, right, there's something happening here. And also when that's maybe the second aha moment, and the third one maybe is if you somewhere else entirely different and someone and you talk about what you're doing, or people ask you what you're doing, and you just drop the name, and they just stop and say, okay, you're doing this? I heard about it, it's amazing, and blah, blah. And then you have like, okay, great, that's happening. It's somewhere, it's going somewhere. It's not just our little bubble, so we're always afraid of like just reaching and just being like this little bubble and entity that's just hidden somewhere. And yeah, that was the last nice thing that happened, where people call and say, yeah, I heard about it. I say, yeah, great.
And so the first few days when this area opened up, it was did you walk into here and think this is going to be great?
It was slightly surreal. I mean, we had a few people who supported us and backed us right from the beginning and said, okay, we are in this together. So we got lucky with this contract, and we had it from August on, I think, next door, and then we got the second part in November or something. And at the beginning it was just all empty, and that was weird when you come into the space and you think, okay, now we have to think about this is real. We need to fill this up with, I don't know, furniture, or where do we get a printer from? What do we have an invoice address? No. And then you need to figure out things because that happened all so quickly. So we saw this end of July and then got, I think mid of July or something, and then we got the space super quickly. And then everything happened quite fast. So we had like this first half year of like figuring out where a few people work from here, we need to pay rents and blah, blah, blah. We need to sustain this big ship for us, big ship at least, for the next years. And then that was weird. These first empty weeks where nothing was in here. That was weird. And it was nice. It was also slightly weird. So because there was not this moment, now we're doing this full time, because we all had our own things still to do. It was just more of an afternoon and morning that we came in and worked from here, and like brought in tables, and then it came very gradually that we put it up. It was nothing like we start now and then it was like a machinery that goes on. It was very organically that it came together. And then I think beginning of February 17, it felt like home already for most of us. And then from there, we still evolved, and people like you came in, and this family and periphery grows in an hopefully very nurturing, flourishing way for us, for all of us.
Where have you got that printer from? I want to take it back.
Because it sucks.
But beautiful. So it almost seems that the co-creation loft, as I will put it in as many buckets as I can try in boxes, but it seems that it might be perhaps an image or an essence of that thing that you and Stassen both felt, in that something was not quite right, but it's very, very hard to move forward into territory that is unknown. And maybe it feels that the co-creation loft is still that force. It's still a solution, but it's a solution becoming, not a solution sold or fest. You know, it's something that is like there was something wrong before, and let's see if we can move some direction for something to happen.
Yeah, that's true, and I think we don't have an idea, a solution for what's coming up next, but we're at least trying to create something where this can evolve from. So or it can contribute towards a certain idea movement that we have. So that's also true that there are, I think at least, I don't know, I'm not a philosopher, but there are these, everybody worships and everybody follows these certain ideas of what the next big thing is going to be. And for us it's this self-exploration in a compass or in a directedness, or however you want to call it. That's our little universe and our little idea of what the world should move towards. And there are also other ideas. There are these California ideology of like technology saving the humanity, and there are other people that worship other ideas, and we are just betting on our ideas, not bringing this to the table and saying, okay, this is something that we need more as humanity and as society, and maybe even as a group of friends, right? And that's what we believe in, and what we not try to say, but still there are the other concepts and so maybe they're mixing up and mingling, whatever, but we're contributing towards hopefully a new way of living together, being together. Yeah. So we don't have an answer if that's right or wrong, or if that's sticking, or if we are obsolete in 5 years, but we're trying to find these new places that are along the way.
So, and this is going to start to segue into the other part of what we're going to talk about a little bit today, which is the Museum of Values, Museum for Werte. So there is a little bit of a drive of that self-compass, that meaning, that personal search for meaning as an individual. And that's the thing, it's tricky because you can't tell somebody else what their meaning is. And meaning changes. What's meaningful to you today might not be meaningful tomorrow. But it is most definitely a driving force. So at the basis of what we find meaningful, what would you say that is the basis of what we find meaningful? I'm trying to segue here.
The meaning of what I think is meaningful.
The base of our meaning, the base of an individual's meaning.
Okay. Wow, that's obviously a big question.
On a very surface level.
Yeah. I think sometimes I have this little metaphor, so sometimes for me life is sometimes like a waiting room. So you, as a child, as when you're young or a baby, whatever, you come in and you just hear noises and you can't make sense of it. There's just a lot of noises going around. And then the older you grow, you may understand that there are certain people in the room and they have different opinions, and there are conversations going on. And then you grow older and you're 20 and you sometimes shout something in just to see how the waiting room, this room, reacts to it. And then at a certain point you start participating in these conversations and in this waiting room. And at the end you're one of these who are constantly talking in this waiting room, maybe leading even conversations. And then you leave. And that is sometimes my life, or our life. We just come in and start interacting and communicating on certain levels. But I want to, my meaning, or what I hope, is to be very aware of what conversation I'm having and what direction we're going with these conversations, because sometimes I think we're just in this and it seems also important at the same time, and everything is urgent and important at the same time, but we sometimes forget to readjust our conversations and to be very aware of that. I think sometimes is that just very in this simple metaphor of this waiting room is to be very aware of my conversation that I'm having in this waiting room before I go to the next level, to the next room, whatever that is.
That's a good metaphor. It's one that I think that sticks with you as well.
Yeah.
It's an evolving metaphor.
Yeah, and you can.
And so, why the Museum of Values? You know, why values? Why are values a good thing?
Why are values a good thing? A few things. I mean, I wrote my first bachelor thesis about the term of freedom in communication, so also obviously in organizations and advertising and pop culture and stuff. And that was my first connection. And before I wrote that, I wrote something about objects, about a piece about objects and how we value objects and what is really valued by our society and what not. So we used to value vinyl, and we used to value CDs, and then that got less and less. Now we're just listening to Spotify all the time, and nobody wants to pay anything for music anymore. So that degraded over the last 15, 20 years. So that was also something where we started off like, what do we value? And then I wrote this massive bachelor thesis about freedom, and it somehow stayed with me for 2 or 3 years. And then I wanted to start something, because then this whole term of emotional intelligence and empathy, at least in my connection, my surroundings, got really big. This discussion about, it's not about intelligence anymore, it's about emotional intelligence, and so I thought of maybe creating a museum for empathy. So I started reading, and then I found a talk on it, and somebody tried to do it, I think in England or something, a couple of years ago. And this whole topic stayed with me for a while. And And then I thought about these objects connection, what we're actually doing now in the museum and stuff. And then I went to a museum. So I had this idea now in my head of creating a little space where you can explore your own values, because I was searching for my own values or my own filter for my life. So how do I decide why I do certain things? I was looking for it. We might call it values, they help us to like filter the world around us. So I thought maybe creating a little space where you can go in and readjust your own filters, and so connected it with objects, and there came this little concept came to life. And then I went to a museum called the Museum of Broken Relationships in Zagreb, and that was the moment where I thought I have to do it, because they did something very similar. They also collected little objects with stories to it, and I thought, when I heard of the museum, it's just about very vague broken relationships, very vague relationships between countries, for example. It's like a traditional museum where they display a weapon because of I don't know, it's connected to a certain war or something, and then I don't know. But I went in there, and that was connected to very personal stories, to breakups between, I don't know, between normal couples, but also this weird story of this prostitute that was a refugee from Malaysia, and she was promised to a man, and they really liked each other. And when she was 15, and then they flew to Netherlands, and she became a prostitute, a sadomaso prostitute. And 20 years later, he visits as a guest. Mm-hmm. And she describes it very nicely in very short text, that they fall out of their roles and they started chatting about their life, and it comes out that he's married now and has children, and at the end then they start doing again, like getting back into the roles, and he asked her for one shoe, one of her like leather dark shoes, black shoes, and she gave the shoe to him, and the other one she gave that to the museum. And I was fascinated by that story, and there were other little stories from from suicidal notes from parents to their children, and I don't know. I was really moved by that museum, and so then it was clear I need to do something like this. And then I met my professor at the uni, and he said, "Yeah, if you really want to do it, follow your instinct and your gut feeling, and I support you." And the only chance I had was doing that as a master thesis, so I can do that during my uni, and so because I was also working here at the Loft, and so I had barely time to do it on the side. So it became my master thesis, and more and more friends joined in helping me. Otherwise, this was a totally disastrous idea of doing that by myself. And so I started in February 17, and we had the first exhibition in October 17, and in a little gallery in 75 square meters, so very, very tiny. But it became very big for us, at least, and it was this hard own journey of bringing this to life. But then it got stuck, and then when I very personally walked through the museum when we were done, and we had like this massive construction week before, because we needed to, paint everything new, install lights, and all on our own bill and on our own money, which was, as a student, really hard at the beginning. But was walking through that myself, I noticed I actually did that museum for myself and not for anyone else. I mean, it's not the idea is, how can you talk about values without being normative? How can we talk about respect without telling you what it is and what it's not? And so I walked through it, and for me, it was sort of mind-blowing, because then you see all these little objects and anecdotes, and you walk through it and read it, and I was really excited. I was afraid that nobody's coming and showing up. Then there were plenty of people, and that was an amazing experience that we had there. And from there, it naturally grew to something bigger. And this was this little beginning phase of, I think, also finding this aha moment of another museum that kicks your ass and says, okay, you're on the right track. You have something that is worth trying out. And also like letting it grow for 2 or 3 years in your own head and like on papers, and it took a while. Even now it's super simple, but it took ages for making it that simple.
And so there's other founders in the Museum for Werther.
Yeah.
Just a few names.
Okay. So when we started, we were a few people. Now really closely, we are 4 working on it. So it's Thomas Loos, Kira Krüger, and Laura Ludwig. They're all part of the team, and we're one team. And then there's also Marcel, Annika, Lina, and amazing people around that helped a lot. My group of friends, they all helped, especially through the first 2 museums, where we all did that by ourselves, opening up, building, constructing, I don't know, with everything. Yeah.
So you're lucky to have such a group of friends to be able to...
Yes, otherwise, I mean, I have this tendency to start something and then don't really know how to get there, and they always rescue me and helping out, also with other things. But that was one of these initiatives or projects that I started without knowing what I'm doing actually, and they saved my ass. Yeah.
Beautiful. And this doing and moving forward, even though you don't know the chaos that might lead ahead, is that something that came naturally to you? Is that something that, as a young Stassen on the Dutch border in Germany, is this something that you were always doing, or is this something that was a little uncomfortable to you?
I haven't found an answer to it. I asked myself that question before. So I was really unhappy in these, at least traditional corporate surroundings, or in these traditional work surroundings. And I don't really like the separation between my life and work, because sometimes, and not in a bad way, but it's growing organically together. And but I have to say or admit that I needed this moment of risking something, and from there it was easier. So to make it explicit or easy to understand is, I was also always carrying my own ideas and stuff in my head, and I was never really trying stuff out. And at one point I did my bachelor, and then you can apply for the master program. And I was really arrogant to think that I would easily get in, which I didn't. And I obviously didn't make any plans for something else. So it was just they just take in a group of 30, I think. And I don't know how many people apply, but I didn't really know what to do, because I thought, I had a great, I think my bachelor was a great experience. I thought that's it. I just do the masters and that's fine. And then I was there having nothing to do, more or less, and my job was alright, but my colleague, my best friend at that time, at least in works, my work-connected friend, he quit it. So I was there and said, okay, I quit too, but what I'm going to do next? And I didn't know. So in that time, I got an offer to start something in Southeast Asia with a friend, an agency. And she didn't really sell it to me in a good way. She didn't really say much. I didn't really know how much I would earn or how much we pay each other, or I don't know how it's going to work out. But I just did it. I booked a flight to Bali without knowing what's happening, and started a company with her on Bali without knowing what was going to happen. And so I was there for half a year. And that was somehow tough, because we had different expectations somehow, not done in a bad way. And she was just doing her own thing, and I was just there helping, and not really doing the things that I want to do. So I thought we do help young people to start their own companies, help them to get out of unemployment and stuff. But at the end, we became this agency, this advertising agency for startups, we made money, and that was interesting and but it was not that thing that I want to do. So I came back again not knowing what to do. And so always this not knowing, this phase of, okay, I'm not knowing what's coming next, and letting that happen and feeling comfortable with that situation. That was the starting point where I noticed that's right, so I don't have to know what's happening half a year, and letting go of this idea of control and security in a way. And I needed that first push by my old uni, who didn't take me, and I started studying a year later then again, the same master program. But I needed this little push for me to feel comfortable with being a freelancer, or whatever I was in between then. So I was, beginning was really, it was insane for me. The first time I really noticed, fuck, I'm doing this, was I flew out, I think on the 1st or 2nd of January 2015, I think I flew out. And on the day before, I think on the 1st, I thought, fuck, what am I actually doing here? So because people started asking, so yeah, you're going to Indonesia? Great. Do you have a visa, or do you have a work permit, or do you have a contract, or what are you going to do the first 2 weeks? It's like, I don't know. I have no clue. And so, and I got ripped off, and I landed on Bali in Denpasar. And I got ripped off really badly on my first taxi ride in the middle of nowhere at 4 a.m. I needed to climb over the house I was renting at that time, because the landlord was not there, and the door was closed, and the key was gone. And it was just, the first days were just insane, for me at least, because I didn't really know. Bali is nice, I was there before. It was just not Bali, but then not knowing what was going to happen, because I was not there for traveling. And my budget was like minimal, so I needed to earn money directly. And I still remember calling home and saying, I can't do this. This is insane. I thought I'm breaking apart. But that helped a little bit, I think. It's a very, very good moment for me.
So who was there on the other end of the line when you called?
A few people, friends obviously, because then at the end more and more friends visited me, and one friend stayed for over a month. The other one worked in Singapore at that time. He came over, and then obviously I also called my parents. They're amazing and always very liberal, and saying, yeah, you can do it, great, just stay, whatever. If you want to come back, you can come back. So not giving you any directions at least. And my back then girlfriend I had, and she was actually amazing, helping me stand. Even though for her it was super hard, because I didn't really know when I was coming back, or if or whatever what's going to happen next. So for us it was really a difficult situation. And then she came over for also 3 weeks or a month nearly, and that was amazing. She took a lot, and to get there, took her a lot to get to Bali while being a medicine student. And so that was that also showed me what I have here. I think I have that. I had also had that in a few moments in my exploration phase. So these 20s were very much exploring and losing my own naive way of seeing and being in the world. Last 10 years, and that showed me who is really there for you, who you can trust and rely on, who you can call, and who's visiting. That was incredible to see that they're all just flying over to visiting you. It's just, what? That's amazing. And that was good. That was incredible. Yeah.
And so, it seems like time and time again, this support network has been able to allow you to be free, and to be creative in the face of chaos.
Yeah, totally. I'm still that chaos, and I have to thank the guys from the museum, for example, over and over again. Every time I'm starting something and nobody knows how we're going to do this, and I'm just saying, yes, great, we do it, and then nobody really knows what's happening. But also not only on this job level, but also on a personal My group of friends is the best I can ever think of. That's just a very tight group of maybe 8 to 10 people, plus then there are also people that are really connected to a few people, and then so we have this amazing group of 20 to 30 people, which is incredible what happens if you like do stuff, if you invite people for dinner, and then they're just people always coming, and it's really good to see, and good to have this feeling of safety around you, even though you don't really know where you're heading yourself. And it gives you this, what you just said, this idea of freedom, or this possibility to try out, and that you know that you have a place to go to.
Sounds like the co-creation loft.
Also the co-creation loft, yeah, that's true. And that's why I said sometimes it's also somehow a little bit egoistic what we or I am doing, because I'm also building that for myself. Right? I can't disconnect that. I can't say, okay, this is just for the world. This is also a place where I love to be what I like to see in the world, and also for myself, and not only for other people.
And I think that might be a good place to end it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jan.